It's been over 7 decades since a mysterious gunfighter rode into our hearts, changing Hollywood forever. But beneath the iconic performances lie stories of triumph and devastating loss. Today we're peeling back the curtain on the stars of Shane. From child actors grown old to legends we lost too soon, this emotional reunion across time will leave you speechless. Witness the shocking transformation of a golden age cast. Alan Ladd as Shane. Born on September 3, 1913 in Hot Springs, Arkansas, the actor first brought the iconic gunslinger to life when filming for Shane began in the summer of 1951. At the age of 37, Ladd's portrayal of the mysterious buckskin-clad drifter who aids a family of pioneer homesteaders became a cultural touchstone of the Western genre, defining the archetype of the noble, world-weary hero. Released in 1953, the movie was a massive critical and commercial success, earning its place as one of the greatest westerns of all time and immortalizing Ladd through the unforgettable image of the lone rider fading into the mountains while a young boy calls his name. Despite portraying a larger-than-life, highly skilled and confident gunfighter, Alan Ladd was deeply insecure, sensitive, and described by those who knew him as the polar opposite of the imposing tough guys he played on screen. Intensely self-conscious about his 5'6" stature, his inner vulnerability was a stark contrast to his rugged characters. His career was also marked by the persistent struggle of being typecast as a stoic Western hero or noir anti-hero, which ultimately made it difficult for him to find diverse, high-quality work as the Hollywood studio system evolved. After the zenith of Shane, his box office draw diminished, leading to professional hardships like dwindling studio support and a string of less successful projects that severely exacerbated his long-standing battles with clinical depression and alcoholism. Alan Ladd continued to act and produce films throughout the 1950s and early 1960s, starring alongside his young son David in The Proud Rebel and running his own production company. He was married twice and raised a family that included future prominent studio executive Alan Ladd Jr., though his personal life remained continually plagued by chronic insomnia and inner demons. In 1962, the actor survived a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the chest, eventually rallying to film a highly anticipated supporting role in The Carpetbaggers. However, Ladd passed away at his home in Palm Springs, California on January 29, 1964, at the age of 50 from cerebral edema caused by an accidental overdose of alcohol and sedatives. The tragic and untimely death of the iconic star shocked the entertainment world, and his final film was released to massive success. Posthumously, a bittersweet aftermath for a tortured talent who is laid to rest at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale. Jack Palance as Jack Wilson. Born on February 18, 1919 in Latimer Mines, Pennsylvania, the son of Ukrainian immigrants first brought the menacing Jack Wilson to life on the big screen in the classic Western Shane. At the age of 32, when he first took the role during the film's 1951 production, Palance's portrayal of the ruthless, dark-clad gunslinger became a cultural touchstone, establishing the definitive cinematic archetype of the villainous hitman in black. Earning him an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor upon the film's 1953 release, his terrifying on-screen presence, cold demeanor, and silent intimidation defined a character that remains one of the Western genre's most iconic figures. Despite the character's cold-blooded, primitive, and terrifying nature, Jack Palance was an articulate, sensitive, and deeply artistic individual described by those who knew him as the polar opposite of Jack Wilson. This contrast was a significant part of his personal journey. He was a university-educated painter and a published poet who wrote romantic verse, finding the violent brutes he portrayed to be completely foreign to his true self. His career was heavily marked by the struggle of being strictly typecast as a villain, largely due to his rugged, craggy facial features. For decades, it was incredibly difficult for him to land the comedic or romantic roles he truly desired, a professional hardship that even prompted him to temporarily move his family to Europe in the 1960s, in a frustrating attempt to escape Hollywood's rigid casting and find more varied work. Jack Palance continued to work in television and film for over half a century, eventually achieving the comedic recognition he had long desired when he won an Academy Award for his self-parodying role as Curly in the 1991 comedy City Slickers. Outside of Hollywood, he lived a quiet, personal life, raising cattle on his California ranch, painting landscapes, and proudly honoring his Ukrainian heritage alongside his family. His final on-screen performance came in the 2004 television movie Back When We Were Grown-Ups. Palance passed away from natural causes at his daughter's home in Montecito, California on November 10, 2006, at the age of 87. His death was followed by special posthumous exhibitions of his original artwork, organized by his widow to benefit cancer research in honor of his late son, a touching aftermath that cemented a gentle creative legacy far removed from his intimidating cinematic reputation. Jean Arthur as Marian Starrett. Born on October 17, 1900 in Plattsburgh, New York, the distinctive and husky-voiced actress brought Marian Starrett to life in the 1953 classic western Shane. At the age of 50, Arthur's portrayal of the steadfast, emotionally torn homesteader's wife became a cinematic touchstone. Her deeply layered performance provided a quiet but profound romantic tension to the film, helping to elevate Shane into one of the most culturally significant, critically acclaimed, and universally beloved westerns in Hollywood history. Despite playing a character known for her grounded resilience and calm frontier fortitude, Jean Arthur was fiercely private, highly neurotic, and famously struggled with crippling stage fright. Her real-life anxiety stood in stark contrast to the confident, capable women she played on screen. Director Frank Capra famously noted that she was so terrified of the camera that she would often lock herself in her dressing room and cry or vomit before and after scenes. Earning the nickname the American Garbo for her utter disdain of publicity and interviews, her overwhelming anxiety eventually curtailed her career. She often clashed with studio executives dropped out of stage productions like the Broadway tryout of Born Yesterday due to her nerves, and eventually walked away from film entirely. Her later attempt at television, the 1966 sitcom The Jean Arthur Show, was another professional hardship, being swiftly canceled after just 12 episodes. Jean Arthur spent her later decades living a quiet, reclusive life in Carmel-by-the-Sea, California, deliberately stepping away from the Hollywood spotlight. She taught drama for a time at Vassar College, where she praised and mentored a young Meryl Streep, but largely remained a fierce protector of her own privacy until the end. Arthur passed away from heart failure in Carmel on June 19, 1991, at the age of 90. True to her lifelong aversion to public attention, she requested that no funeral service be held. She was cremated, and her ashes were scattered at sea off the coast of Point Lobos, California, bringing a peaceful and profoundly private, close to the life of a Hollywood legend. Van Heflin as Joe Starrett. Born Emmett Evan Heflin, Jr. on December 13, 1908 in Walters, Oklahoma, the versatile actor first took on the role of Joe Starrett when filming began in the summer of 1951. At the age of 42, Heflin's portrayal of the steadfast, hard-working homesteader attempting to carve out a peaceful life for his family became the emotional anchor of Shane, 1953. The character resonated deeply with audiences representing the civilized, resilient future of the American frontier. The film itself became a monumental cultural landmark and is widely regarded as one of the greatest westerns in Hollywood history, with Starrett's quiet integrity enduring as a definitive portrait of the pioneer spirit. Despite the character's dirt-bound existence and earnest simplicity, Van Heflin was a highly intellectual, sophisticated individual and an experienced seaman. Holding a master's degree in theater from Yale University, his real-life passions lay with the ocean, having spent years working on ships in his youth, which stood in stark contrast to the landlocked, pragmatic farmer he portrayed on screen. Professionally, despite winning an Academy Award early in his career for Johnny Eager Heflin, struggled against the constraints of a Hollywood system that often marginalized him in favor of more conventionally handsome leading men like his Shane co-star Alan Ladd. Instead of achieving traditional marquee superstardom, he often found himself typecast as weary, morally conflicted, or suffering supporting characters. This perceived limitation in his film career was a source of frustration, frequently leading him to step away from Hollywood to find more fulfilling, creatively challenging work on the Broadway stage. Van Heflin continued to deliver critically acclaimed performances throughout the 1950s and 1960s in films like 3:10 to Yuma and Airport, while remaining active in theater and radio. His personal life was marked by a 25-year marriage to actress Frances Neal, with whom he had 3 children before they divorced in 1967. Tragically, his life was cut short doing something he loved. On June 6, 1971, Heflin suffered a massive heart attack while taking his daily swim in his Hollywood apartment pool. He managed to pull himself to the ladder and clung to it until he was found unconscious hours later. He fell into a coma, never regained consciousness, and passed away at Cedars of Lebanon Hospital on July 23, 1971, at the age of 62. In a deeply fitting aftermath that honored his lifelong devotion to the water, a private funeral was held, and his ashes were scattered at sea, concluding the life of an actor whose quiet intensity left an indelible mark on cinematic history. Brandon DeWilde as Joe Starrett. Born on April 9, 1942 in Brooklyn, New York, the young actor brought immense emotional weight to the classic 1953 Western Shane. At the age of 9, when he first took the role, DeWilde's portrayal of the idolizing young pioneer boy Joe Starrett became a massive cultural touchstone. His haunting, desperate final cry of "Shane, come back" remains one of the most iconic and recognizable moments in cinema history, earning him an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor and cementing his place as one of the era's most memorable child stars. Despite his on-screen persona as a wide-eyed, innocent frontier boy, Brandon DeWilde was actually a sophisticated kid from a theatrical New York family who grew up deeply embedded in the Broadway scene. As he matured, his career was marked by the notorious struggles inherent to child stardom. He found it immensely difficult to shake the towering shadow of little Joe Starrett, though he successfully transitioned into adolescent roles in acclaimed films like HUD and All Fall Down. He was repeatedly typecast as the earnest hero-worshipping youth. By the late 1960s, as he tried to break out into leading adult roles, he faced significant professional hardships, struggling to find steady, high-profile cinematic work and increasingly relying on television guest appearances to sustain his career. In his later years, DeWilde continued to pursue stage acting and television roles while also exploring a deep passion for music, hoping to carve out a parallel career. He was married twice and had 1 son from his first marriage. Tragically, his journey was cut short before he could fully reinvent his adult career. Brandon DeWilde passed away on July 6, 1972, at the age of 30 due to severe injuries sustained in a traffic accident when his camper van crashed into a parked flatbed truck in Lakewood, Colorado. At the time of his death, he was in the Denver area starring in a stage production of Butterflies Are Free. His sudden premature passing stunned the entertainment industry, leaving behind the bittersweet legacy of a deeply talented actor forever immortalized in his youth. Ben Johnson as Chris Callaway. Born on June 13, 1918 in Foraker, Oklahoma, on the Osage Indian Reservation, the real-life cowboy and rodeo champion transitioned to Hollywood to bring rugged authenticity to the screen. At the age of 34, Johnson's portrayal of the tough, barroom-brawling henchman Chris Callaway in the 1953 classic Shane left a lasting mark on the Western genre. As a bully who famously taunts the titular hero by tossing whiskey in his face, his character's ultimate evolution into a man who finds his conscience and attempts to make amends provided a memorable, nuanced depiction of frontier redemption that became a cultural touchstone for classic Western cinema. Despite playing a malicious and aggressive henchman, Ben Johnson was a fundamentally decent, soft-spoken, and principled man in real life who was the polar opposite of a barroom bully. This contrast extended to his professional choices. He vastly preferred playing honorable characters, and even initially rejected his eventual Oscar-winning role in The Last Picture Show because he found the script's foul language and content deeply offensive to his personal morals. His career was also marked by professional hardships, including a severe struggle with being typecast. Admitting he was afraid of failure outside of his comfort zone, he found himself almost exclusively restricted to cowboy and stunt roles. His refusal to tolerate Hollywood abuse also cost him dearly. After standing up to legendary director John Ford's browbeating on set and telling him to go to hell, Johnson was practically blacklisted by the powerful director for 11 years. This made it difficult for him to find prominent film work and prompted him to temporarily abandon the acting industry altogether to return to the rodeo circuit. Johnson eventually returned to a highly successful acting career, continuing to work steadily in films and television into the 1990s while quietly operating a horse breeding ranch in California. He shared a deeply devoted personal life with his wife Carol, to whom he was married for 53 years until her passing in 1994, though the couple never had children. Johnson passed away on April 8, 1996, at the age of 77 from a sudden heart attack. In a tragic and poignant aftermath, the veteran actor collapsed while visiting his 96-year-old mother Ollie at the Leisure World Retirement Community in Mesa, Arizona, where they both lived. His body was subsequently transported back to his beloved home state and laid to rest at the Pawhuska City Cemetery in Oklahoma, leaving behind a unique legacy as the only person in history to win both an Academy Award and a World Rodeo Championship. Edgar Buchanan as Fred Lewis. Born on March 20, 1903, in Humansville, Missouri, the actor first brought his distinct presence to the 1953 cinematic masterpiece, Shane. At the age of 50, Buchanan's portrayal of Fred Lewis, a cautious and beleaguered homesteader standing against a ruthless cattle baron, became an integral part of the film's cultural impact. Shane stands as one of the greatest westerns ever made, and Buchanan's authentic performance provided emotional gravity to the plight of the settlers, offering audiences a poignant look at the quiet courage and everyday struggles of ordinary pioneers in the Old West. Despite frequently playing uneducated rustics, weary pioneers, and grumbling sidekicks, Edgar Buchanan's real-life background was a stark contrast to his on-screen persona. He was a highly educated professional who ran a successful dental practice alongside his wife before pivoting to acting full-time. His career, however, was marked by the struggle of being heavily typecast. His gravelly voice, grizzled look, and natural folksy demeanor meant he was consistently pigeonholed into variations of the same older, rustic archetype, severely limiting his dramatic opportunities. Furthermore, after becoming deeply associated with the television rural sitcom boom, most notably as the famously lazy Uncle Joe Carson on Petticoat Junction, Buchanan faced the professional hardship of the early 1970s rural purge, when television networks abruptly canceled country-themed shows to appeal to younger urban demographics. Actors like Buchanan found their signature roles suddenly obsolete and subsequent work much harder to secure. Buchanan continued to act sporadically throughout the 1970s, most notably appearing in the 1974 family classic Benji, where he reunited with his beloved canine co-star Higgins from his sitcom days. He lived quietly away from the Hollywood spotlight, enjoying a long and stable personal life with his wife of over 50 years, Mildred sharing a deep bond rooted in their mutual past as dentists. Edgar Buchanan passed away in Palm Desert, California on April 4, 1979, at the age of 76 from a stroke complicated by pneumonia. His death marked the loss of one of Hollywood's most recognizable character actors, leaving behind a prolific legacy of over 100 films and television shows that firmly cemented his place in classic American entertainment. Elisha Cook, Jr. as Stonewall Tory. Born on December 26, 1903 in San Francisco, California, the veteran character actor brought a defiant spirit to the screen in the classic Western Shane. At the age of 47 during filming Cook's portrayal of the fiercely proud ex-Confederate homesteader, Frank Stonewall Tory became a legendary piece of cinema history. His character's dramatic mud-soaked confrontation with the ruthless hired gun, Jack Wilson, Jack Palance, resulted in one of the most famous and shocking death scenes in the Western genre. This moment underscored the film's gritty themes of violence and sacrifice, leaving a massive cultural impact that still defines the doomed homesteader archetype today. Despite building a vast career out of playing neurotics, jittery hitmen, and hot-headed losers on screen, Elisha Cook, Jr. was the polar opposite in real life. He was a gentle, quiet, and reclusive man who detested the glitz of the Hollywood lifestyle, preferring to spend his time fly fishing and living completely off the grid in the remote high Sierra Mountains. Because of his highly specific nervous screen presence, he battled heavy typecasting for decades, frequently relegated to playing the doomed fall guy or the disposable henchman in film noir masterpieces like The Big Sleep and The Maltese Falcon. While he embraced the work to fund his outdoor passions, often disappearing into the wilderness until his agent summoned him for a new role, the narrow range of characters offered to him prevented him from breaking out into a wider variety of leading parts. Cook continued to work steadily as a beloved character actor for several more decades, appearing in cinematic landmarks like Stanley Kubrick's The Killing and Roman Polanski's Rosemary's Baby. He later gained a new generation of fans by recurring as the quirky underworld boss Ice Pick on the 1980s television series Magnum P.I. He eventually retired to the California mountains with his wife Peggy, living out his remaining years in the nature he loved so much. Elisha Cook Jr. passed away on May 18, 1995, at the age of 91 from a stroke. As a fitting final tribute, his remains were cremated, and his ashes were scattered across his beloved Sierra Nevada mountains, offering a serene rest for a man whose Hollywood legacy was largely defined by on-screen anxiety and turmoil. Ellen Corby as Mrs. Liz Tory. Born on June 3, 1911 in Racine, Wisconsin, the versatile character actress brought a poignant emotional weight to the role of Mrs. Liz Tory in the legendary 1953 Western Shane. At the age of 41, Corby's portrayal of the resilient, grief-stricken homesteader wife, whose husband is famously gunned down by a ruthless hired killer, provided a crucial layer of realism to the film's depiction of the brutal American frontier. While a supporting part, her memorable performance helped anchor the human stakes of the story, contributing significantly to the cultural impact of what remains one of the most acclaimed and defining westerns in cinematic history. In contrast to the traditional downtrodden pioneer wife she played in Shane, Ellen Corby was fiercely independent, uniquely progressive, and deeply spiritual in real life, even traveling to India in 1969 to train under Maharishi Mahesh Yogi and become a teacher of transcendental meditation. Her professional journey, however, was fraught with obstacles. She spent 12 frustrating years working behind the scenes as a script girl and continuity editor, struggling to be taken seriously as an on-screen performer. Once she finally broke into acting, she faced relentless typecasting, finding herself continually boxed into small, restrictive roles as gossips, spinsters, and maids, making it difficult for her to secure substantial leading parts. Later in her career, she endured a devastating professional and physical hurdle when a massive stroke in 1976 robbed her of her speech and mobility, abruptly halting her work and threatening to end her livelihood entirely. Showing immense resilience, Corby remarkably returned to acting bravely, incorporating her real-life stroke recovery into her performances, most famously in her multiple Emmy-winning role as Grandma Esther on the hit television series The Waltons. Off-screen, she maintained a quiet and fiercely private personal life. After a short marriage to a film director ended in divorce in 1944 without children, she lived out her remaining decades with her devoted friend and companion of 45 years, Stella Lucetta. Ellen Corby passed away at the Motion Picture and Television Country House and Hospital in Woodland Hills, California, on April 14, 1999, at the age of 87, from natural causes, following a long period of declining health. Her passing resulted in an outpouring of fond memories from her extensive network of co-stars, and she was cremated and interred at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California, leaving behind a lasting legacy as one of Hollywood's most treasured matriarchs. Nancy Culp as Mrs. Howells. Born on August 28, 1921, the Harrisburg, Pennsylvania native first brought Mrs. Howells to life in the 1953 Western film Shane. At the age of 31, Culp's portrayal of the rugged, hard-working homesteader contributed to a cinematic masterpiece that redefined its genre. While the role was minor, her presence helped ground a gritty and realistic depiction of the cattleman-homesteader conflict that resonated deeply with audiences. The film became a massive cultural touchstone, earning critical acclaim, and launching Culp into a decades-long career as one of classic Hollywood and television's most recognizable character actors. Despite playing simple pioneer women and later rigidly comical figures like Miss Jane Hathaway, Nancy Culp was an intensely intellectual and deeply serious individual, contrasting sharply with her on-screen personas. Highly educated with degrees in journalism, English, and French, and a decorated World War II veteran who rose to the rank of lieutenant in the U.S. Navy waves, Culp's real life was a far cry from her quirky characters. Her career was marked by the struggle of being typecast, which made it difficult for her to be seen beyond her famous television roles. This professional frustration was compounded by a devastating public betrayal. During her 1984 run for the U.S. House of Representatives, her former co-star, Buddy Ebsen, filmed a commercial endorsing her opponent and calling her too liberal, a needless and cruel sting that ultimately derailed her campaign. Nancy Culp stepped away from Hollywood following her election defeat and took on a position as an artist-in-residence at Juniata College in Pennsylvania while keeping her personal life, including her lesbianism, which she only publicly acknowledged late in life, intensely private. She eventually retired to Palm Desert, California, where she remained active in local theater and charity work. Culp passed away at a friend's home in Palm Desert on February 3, 1991, at the age of 69 following a battle with cancer. Her passing was preceded by a private reconciliation with Ebsen, and her remains were interred at Westminster Presbyterian Cemetery in Mifflintown, Pennsylvania. As a bittersweet but lasting testament to her career's defining role, her headstone was proudly engraved with the moniker Miss Jane Hathaway. John Dierkes as Morgan Ryker. Born on February 10, 1905 in Cincinnati, Ohio, the towering former economist first brought the menacing Morgan Ryker to life when production began on the classic Western Shane. At the age of 46, Dierkes' portrayal of the callous cattleman became a crucial element of the film's legendary tension, helping to define the archetypal battle between honest homesteaders and ruthless barons. Released in 1953, the film was a massive critical and commercial success, with Dierkes' imposing presence culminating in the iconic final barroom shootout alongside Jack Palance, cementing the movie as a cultural touchstone and one of the greatest westerns in cinematic history. Despite the character's ruthless and intimidating nature, John Dierkes was a highly educated, soft-spoken intellectual who was described as the polar opposite of the brutes he portrayed on screen. A graduate of Brown University who previously served as an economist for the U.S. State Department and the Treasury, he fell into acting entirely by chance after being sent to Hollywood as a technical advisor. This stark contrast between his mind and his appearance became the defining struggle of his career. Because of his gaunt, craggy features and towering 6'6" frame, his career was marked by severe typecasting. He found himself consistently confined to playing creepy villains, rugged henchmen, or eccentric frontiersmen, which made it extremely difficult for him to secure nuanced or leading roles that matched his real-life intelligence and gentle demeanor. John Dierkes continued to work steadily in character roles for 2 decades, leveraging his distinctive appearance in films like The Alamo, 1960, and science fiction staples such as The Omega Man, 1971. He maintained a quiet personal life away from the Hollywood spotlight, raising 4 children with his wife Cynthia, and eventually retiring from acting around 1973 after a string of minor television appearances on shows like Gunsmoke. Dierkes passed away in Los Angeles, California on January 8, 1975, at the age of 69 from emphysema. His death marked the quiet end of a reliable supporting player's journey, and he was cremated with his ashes scattered, leaving behind a memorable legacy as a striking cinematic figure in some of Hollywood's most enduring classics. Paul McVey as Sam Grafton. Born on March 17, 1898, the Boston, Massachusetts native first brought Sam Grafton to life during the production of the 1953 classic Western Shane. At the age of 53, when he initially took the role, McVey's portrayal of the pragmatic and observant store owner and saloon keeper became a vital piece of a cinematic masterpiece, offering a grounded depiction of a frontier businessman trying to maintain peace between ruthless ranchers and desperate homesteaders. His nuanced performance defined a character that remains a crucial fixture in one of Hollywood's most iconic and culturally significant westerns. Despite the character's respected status and central grounded role in the community, Paul McVey's real life in Hollywood was that of a relentless working-class journeyman far removed from the stable prominence of Sam Grafton. This contrast was a significant part of his personal journey. While Grafton was a commanding presence who successfully operated the town's social hub, McVey spent decades battling the relative anonymity of the studio system. His career was marked by the struggle of being heavily typecast and frequently relegated to uncredited bit parts, often playing nameless doctors, investigators, and clerks. He navigated the professional sting of having his extensive efforts go unrecognized by the wider public, making it a constant hustle to find consistent, prominently billed work throughout the golden age of Hollywood. Paul McVey continued to work tirelessly in television and film, amassing well over 100 credits in a career that spanned several decades, appearing in notable projects like Force of Evil and Stowaway. Despite never achieving mainstream stardom or top billing, he maintained a reputation as a highly dependable character actor. McVey passed away in the United States on January 1, 1973, at the age of 74 from undisclosed causes. His passing went largely unheralded by the major press, a quiet aftermath typical for many of the era's unsung background actors. But his vast body of work left behind an enduring footprint with his role in Shane, forever immortalizing him in one of cinema's greatest masterpieces. As we look back at the faces that once defined the American West, we are reminded that while time moves on, a hero's legacy never truly fades. Shane was not just a movie. It was a snapshot of a golden era. Seeing where life took these icons evokes a deep sense of gratitude for their artistry. If this trip down memory lane touched your heart today, please hit that like button and subscribe for more classic Hollywood journeys.